Teresa Pearce.
I'm grateful to the House and to Madam Deputy Speaker for allowing me this opportunity to speak here for the first time. I've listened carefully to the debate and I extend my congratulations to the honourable members who've made varied, interesting and eloquent speeches. This is the first maiden speech for a member for Erith and Thamesmead, as my predecessor John Austin made his maiden speech in 1992 as a member for Woolwich before my constituency was formed for the 1997 election. John Austin is a man who served his community for over 40 years, first as a councillor, then as mayor, then as leader of the councillor, and then in this place as Member of Parliament. During his time here, he took up many causes and fought tirelessly against injustice, and particularly for women's rights. I'd like to commend especially his work he did on the Council of Europe in respect of human trafficking. John Austin is one of the handful of men I've ever met who I could truly call a feminist. In Erith and Thamesmead, like many other urban areas, we have a long, proud, multicultural tradition. We are an area where people come to settle. One of our primary schools is called Windrush, in honour of those who came from the West Indies in the 50s and 60s to help Britain rebuild after the war. We are the place where many Vietnamese boat people put down roots in the 1970s. And Erith itself is where Alexander Selkirk, who was the real-life model for Robinson Crusoe, landed in 1711 when he came home after many years on a desert island, truly a place of homecomings. And now, in the past decade, we have a fast-growing African community that has settled here and intends to make it its home. So much so that I'm sure that during the forthcoming World Cup, they will be cheering just as loudly for England as they will for their native Nigeria and Ghana. The area also consists of other places such as Abbey Wood, Belvedere, Lesners Abbey and Plumstead. Plumstead, where during the late 19th century we had a wonderful football team named Woolwich Arsenal. They played there till just before the First World War, when they dropped the name Woolwich and moved north of the river. And I'm not quite sure what happened to them after that. In the north of the constituency, we boast a Grade 1 listed building, which has been described as a masterpiece of engineering, a Victorian cathedral of ironwork, which is a lovely way to describe the Crossness sewage works. Crossness houses the Victorian beam engines that have been lovingly restored by the Crossness Engines Trust, a registered charity that since 1987 has overseen the restoration project. In the mid-19th century, Crossness was part of the visionary work of Sir Joseph Bazalgette, who built the London sewer network that cleaned up London and wiped out the cholera epidemics that had previously killed Londoners by the hundred every year. It is ironic that Sir Joseph's great-grandson is Peter Bazalgette, the TV executive who brought the phenomena of Big Brother to Britain. And whereas Sir Joseph spent much of his life trying to get rid of unwanted waste from the homes of the nation, some may say his great-grandson has done quite the opposite. I've lived in Erith and Thamesmead for over 30 years, but as for my political motivations, the Honourable Member for Corby said that she was inspired into politics by Mrs Thatcher, and I have to say that I was too, but I imagine for completely different reasons. And I was born in 1955. I was a child of the welfare state, and that welfare state helped my family and millions of families like us have opportunities that previous generations could only dream of. A free health service, a right to education, a national insurance system that is there when you pay into when you don't need it, so it's there when you do. The welfare state gave me a ladder, which I fully used, and this in turn enabled my own two daughters to achieve their full potential. All these things were Labour developments of which I am proud, as I'm proud now of Sure Start, the Future Jobs Fund and the National Minimum Wage, which are all key building blocks in the fight against poverty. If there is to be dignity in work, then poverty pay has no place in the 21st century. In my previous career, tax, national insurance and the national minimum wage were my fields of expertise, and I came across no end of imaginative ways that employers would try to get around paying the national minimum wage. But who is it who really pays when business pays poverty wage rates? It is the rest of us, the taxpayers, who subsidise the low pay through the benefit and tax credit system while the employers pockets a profit. And we have heard here today that the best way out of poverty is through work, but it must be through work that is paid a living wage. This is a crucial economic time. The economy is beginning to grow and borrowing is falling. To risk this now by cuts to the public sector and job opportunities puts us in grave danger of a double dip. Anyone who, like me, has sat in a job centre week after week will tell you that cuts to services such as the Future Jobs Fund is not cutting waste. It is cutting opportunity, cutting hope and cutting life chances. The Coalition seems to be promising so much change, yet their cuts seem to preclude the change that my constituents need. Indeed, the only change the Coalition will be bringing to Erith and Thamesmead is a change for the worse, with the cuts to the jobs programme that, along with Sure Start and the national minimum wage, has brought the first effective reduction in poverty in Erith and Thamesmead for a generation. And I know that government is to govern for all the people, not just those I consider to be my natural constituents. But contrary to some, I believe there is such a thing as society, and no matter what your income or voting tendency, we all live within it. Therefore, policies that help the weak, the vulnerable, the unemployed, the disadvantaged add to the quality of life of all of us. There is no point at all in paying less tax if you live a life with bars on your windows and a personal alarm in your hand. And I understand that government is about tough choices. Life is about tough choices. But by tough, I mean strong and durable, not cruel or severe. It is vital for the recovery that we keep people in work. Unemployment reduces national wealth and tax revenues. To insist we protect jobs is not socialist sentimentality, it is economic common sense. People in Erith and Thamesmead earn below average and have higher unemployment, and one of the reasons is that their transport connections are poor. Thamesmead was built in the 1960s and the Jubilee line was meant to run there, but that never happened, and 30 years later there are 30,000 residents without a station. West of Tower Bridge there are 24 crossings, and to the east just 2 Victorian tunnels, a ferry and a toll bridge at Dartford. Not difficult to see that this makes accessing the work and business opportunities in the city all the more difficult if you live where I do. I'm now pleased to see that the London Mayor and I seem to agree on something, and that is that the Abbeywood line of Crossrail must go ahead. If you live in Thamesmead, you can see the bright lights of the city 3 miles across the river, but to get there you have to travel by foot, by bus, by train, by DLR, and it takes over an hour. The same amount of time it takes the business traveller from Paris or Antwerp to get to City Airport, flying close over the heads of Thamesmead residents. The people of Erith and Thamesmead are not without pride or aspiration. They band together to run voluntary and community groups. They run local history projects. They clean the canals. They mentor young people. They serve meals at the pop-in parlours. They help the disadvantaged and elderly through their temples and churches. They are a true coalition, a coalition of the willing who just want to be given a chance. So finally, I would say that a place such as Thamesmead will be a test of the Prime Minister's big society. The big society that is meant to relocalise the economy, recapitalise the poor, redemocratise power. If the big society is to mean anything other than a slogan, the government needs vision. And a vision of a cross-capital rail link is vital not only to the economy of London, but the UK as a whole. And the vision of a living wage, upgraded year on year, is vital to the fight against poverty. I hope to be a strong voice for the Erith and Thamesmead residents, making sure that they are able to access the opportunities that should be available to them living in the southeast corner of a world-class city. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.